Let's talk about Yusuke Urameshi. As someone who ranks Yu Yu Hakusho in their top 3 anime and manga lists, I'm incredibly biased. I love the heroes, the villains, the settings, the power-ups, the abilities, the lore, literally everything. And throughout the show, I would see these epic battles or bits of dialogue between characters, and each one would become my favorite part of the series, right up until the next epic battle or cool character one-liner. Of course, the character with the best fights and coolest bits of dialogue is the half-demon delinquent himself, Yusuke Urameshi. This isn't going to be too much of a deep dive into his character, but I do want to talk about a couple of things he notably does and says, and how I find myself relating to it. So yeah, this is going to get personal, maybe even a little bit emotional. You have been warned. Yusuke is a bad kid from a bad family who does bad things. He's an underage, drinking, chain smoking delinquent who occasionally turns up for school, fights entire gangs single handedly, and is feared by his peers. With two notable exceptions, of course. Teachers go out of their way to push his buttons, other kids invoke his name to scare people, and the general public just overall shun him. In many ways, Yusuke doesn't fit into the way society has been crafted, and he's destined to become just another bad kid who slipped through the cracks. Yusuke is a product of teen pregnancy. His mother, Atsuko, gave birth to him at the age of 15. His father is not present physically, and in reality, his mother isn't present emotionally. All of this, that is to say, makes up a large part of who Yusuke is and what he represents. So, retrospectively, I've come back to this video a few days after recording it, and I think I've been a little bit harsh on Yusuke's mother. She is very clearly, by the end of the series, shown to be a victim of domestic abuse at the hands of her partner at the time, Yusuke's real father, who gets 2 pages worth in the manga, which he's not important, to be honest, and clearly a domestic abuser. So yeah, I'm gonna take back my probably quite harsh criticism of Atsuko as a mother and say that she's probably quite a traumatized person. So yeah, wanted to flag that because it didn't quite sit right with me. Anyway, back to the video. So when Yusuke dies in the first episode of the anime and is given the choice to return back to life by the Shinigami Botan, he refuses. To Yusuke, he's died doing something noble, and so unexpected that even the afterlife didn't see it coming. It's only after going to his own funeral and witnessing how his death has actually affected those who consider themselves close to Yusuke in different ways, does he start to realize that actually his life does matter. To Principal Takanaka, Yusuke's death is a waste. He wishes he had been able to turn him from his path and see him make something of himself, despite the poor start he had in life. For Kuwabara, Yusuke was his rival. He was always supposed to be around for him to challenge and eventually overcome. In many ways, he wanted to be just like Yusuke, but now he's dead. What does he have to fight for anymore? Keiko, likewise, always saw something in Yusuke and would defend him publicly, even at risk of her own social standing. Her affection from a young age meant she could see through the rough exterior he had put up around himself over the years, and her anger at Yusuke originates from the fact that she knows he's a good person, but he refuses to let others see that in him. And finally, Atsuko. She comes to terms with the fact that she was a bad mother to Yusuke and had let him down probably the most. She goes from being paralyzed with grief to openly weeping as the reality sets in that she has lost her only child. After the funeral, the reactions to his death of those closest to him makes Yusuke change his mind. He wants to live, not only for himself, but also for the sake of those who care. It only took his death for Yusuke's worldview to change. So now, on a personal note, as a mixed race child who grew up in a predominantly white rural area, I was written off in many ways. It's funny because my response to that was to work harder, study, and change myself to be more acceptable to the community I wanted to be a part of. And no matter what I did, I was still othered by people I was desperate to accept me. So, yeah, I guess as a kid, I wish I was more like Yusuke. I wish I was able to be myself enough that even if it only meant a few of my peers would respect me or consider themselves my friends, that seems better than what I did, which was to try to force myself into being a person that I could never be and would never truly be accepted. But anyway, a lot happens in the series after this. Yusuke gains more parental figures and rivals and friends. He completely abandons the world that rejects him from birth and becomes part of something bigger. As a spirit detective, he saves countless lives and sacrifices his own to protect a world that turned its back on him. It's in the final arc of Yu Yu Hakusho that Yusuke gets an opportunity to explore his heritage. His demon ancestor becomes aware that his genes have finally awoken in a descendant powerful enough to wield them. Ryzen, Yusuke's ancestral father, is one of the 3 kings of the demon realm. For hundreds of years, he has refused to consume human flesh after having fallen in love with a woman and fathering a child. He considers Yusuke to be his son, as he is his first in a long line of descendants strong enough to awaken their demon side. For Yusuke, he is immediately confronted by the father figure he never had, and he now faces a choice. Stay in the human world and continue to live his life as it was before he became a spirit detective and saved the world, being harassed by teachers and just generally being looked down upon, or return to the demon world, meet his father, and learn more about himself in a world that respects his strength. Unsurprisingly, he returns to Demon World and takes up Raizen's challenge of training under him and his servants so that he may soon defeat him and take over his position as one of the 3 kings of Demon World. Their first encounter has Yusuke attack Raizen, who resoundingly thumps him and shows the true gap of power between the two. Once again, Yusuke now has a goal and someone to look up to. In a similar way, he has looked up to and surpassed both Genkai and Takuro. However, Raizen, who's been slowly starving to death for hundreds of years, knows that his time is close. He imparts what lessons he can in strength and in ruling before passing away. Yusuke begs of Raizen to renounce his vow and consume human flesh, but Raizen refuses. Stubbornly committing to his promise, he passes away. Yusuke is again figuratively fatherless, but no longer aimless. He has inherited a purpose and a reason to fight from his father, and with this new mandate he confronts Yomi and Mukuro, the other 2 kings, and he sets out a vision of a demon world that is, and I use the term in the loosest possible sense, democratically run. Yusuke's interpretation of democracy is that whoever the strongest is should be in charge for a few years by way of a tournament. Skipping further ahead, Yusuke eventually fights his father's main rival Yomi and narrowly loses. Having put everything on the line, sacrificing years of his life and his undefined relationship with Keiko, Yusuke returns to human world and everyone he left behind on his journey of self-exploration. Our identity is something that we all confront in various stages of our life, and factors outside of our control, like family and community, all help to shape that. In Yusuke, we see what happens when those external factors are either non-existent or actively work against us. But at the end of the day, Yusuke confirms to the audience what we all suspected from the beginning. He's a good person who cares for others, even if he struggles to show that at times. And I'm done.